Right, head of news at the News Movement, Rebecca Hutson, and The Sun's chief political correspondent, Jack Elsom, are with us for a look through this morning's papers. Morning, gang.
Morning.
Morning.
Rebecca, we'll start with you. Front page of the Mail, all about Sunak and last night.
Yeah, didn't he have a great evening last night? I think if I told my team to unite or die and then I had to spend a week scrabbling around trying to get them to behave, I would maybe die instead. So we got the reading of the Rwanda Bill, just sort of scraped through the Commons last night with a majority of 44. And so while he kind of lives to see another day, I think he's probably absolutely dreading the new year, where we're really going to start getting into the nitty-gritty of this deeply unworkable legislation. We've got amendments to come. It's got to get through the House of Lords. It's actually got to get through the Commons, hasn't it? Then it's got to get through the House of Lords. Then it's got to get through the courts. And then this thing has got to work. And I think it's doomed to fail. I don't think we've ever seen a kind of shakier Sunak than we have last night. And I think nothing is spelling kind of election more than what we saw last night.
Is it his Brexit? Is this a zombie government, Jack Elsom?
I think so. This is the new divide, isn't it? You know, Rwanda has become the new Brexit of the Tory party, and Rebecca's completely right. In the new year, he might have delayed the pain last night and scraped a sort of Pyrrhic victory, but in the new year...
I love that word, Pyrrhic. Do you know what that means? No. You win, but you lose so much in achieving the victory.
Exactly.
Oh, I do know it well.
And what has he promised these Tory rebels? He has said to them, allegedly, that he's going to be looking at tightening up this bill.
Which is going to upset the One Nation Tories.
Exactly, so he's completely snookered. He's in such a tight spot now that come the new year, when these rebels go, oh, come on then, you know, where's this amendments which you promised us? And he goes, well, actually, there's not much I can do, because if I appease you, and the other lot who are currently backing me are going to pull the plug on their support. And so I can't see how he gets out of this spot. He's going to have to spend Christmas holidays thinking whatever wriggle room he has to try and worm himself out of this one. But
Happy Christmas,
I can't see it at the moment.
Okay.
I think the Brexit comparison is really interesting, because I think it works within the Tory party. They're very much divided on it. However, I don't think it has the same cut through to the British public. You know, we were all discussing Brexit on such a huge scale. It led to family arguments. But I don't think Rwanda's quite the same. I think maybe more so than ever, the British public are on the outside looking in going, what on earth are they doing?
I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters to the British public. Whether as much as Brexit is interesting, no, probably not.
That this is... It's not the cost of living crisis.
No.
You know, it's got nothing to do with the cost of living crisis, although some politicians will say, well, if we didn't have so many people coming in, etc., then our services would be working, which it doesn't actually make that much logical sense. But I don't think that people will be as concerned with it as the Tories are themselves.
Yeah, and it's definitely not at the moment as a divisive issue in itself. Rwanda, I think immigration, like you said, is a massive issue, especially for those red wall voters. However, you can see a world in which the Tory party try and play up this ECHR route going into an election as their new Brexit. And they say, well, hang on a minute, one of the reasons we can't get flights off the ground is because of the European courts. We'll go into an election saying, you know, maybe not leave in total, but, you know, definitely disapply maybe elements of the ECHR when it comes to our Rwanda policy, if that's what it takes to get it over the line. However, at the moment, their problem is not European judges, it's people in their own party who are scuppering this.
Very interesting.
Right, Jack, front page of the Telegraph. This very, very tragic story about a migrant, asylum seeker, dying on a barge in a suspected suicide.
Incredibly sad story coming out of yesterday. Like you said, an asylum seeker, understood to be in their 20s, died yesterday on this barge, understood to be suicide, although not confirmed. Allegedly had even complained about their mental health the day before. It's just incredibly sad, and you have charities like Care for Calais coming out and making the point that from start to finish, this barge has been a complete fiasco. You know, we saw last year, obviously we had the first few migrants go onto the barge. Within a week, people had to be taken off because of Legionella, only went back on a few months later, and you know, obviously the details of this is probably going to come out in the coming days, but it does seem at the moment that, well, whatever you think about the actual barge policy, this barge in itself, and there's just one of them, has been more hassle than it's worth, and you know, everyone's thoughts are going to be with this asylum seeker at this tragic time.
Yeah, absolutely, and also it's a very, you know, even to look at it from a very financial, kind of cold-hearted approach, it is absolutely unsustainable to keep paying for this barge. For me, as an outsider, it seems like they chose it purely because it looks like a prison.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. I think this Rwanda, it just shows that this kind of obsession with looking really tough on the world's most vulnerable people is more important to this government than looking after people who come to these shores and actually dealing with the problem. And, you know, what we saw yesterday on the Bibi Stockholm is absolutely unacceptable. Like, we make a promise to the world that we are a safe and secure country. And if we cannot look after people who come here in desperation and we pack them in what looks like a floating prison, I mean, the accounts coming out of what it's like on the Bibi Stockholm is so disturbing. Yeah. This man talking for days in advance about his, you know, his mental health. You know, they're crammed into these tiny rooms. There is nothing else to do. They have limited access to anything outside of this barge. You know, this is a time bomb of problems, and we want to go and replicate this in Rwanda, all to look tough. And actually, no, it's not even all to look tough, is it? It's just so that one of them gets the job of running the party next year when Rishi Sunak uses.
Do you think there could be culpability over this? If it's confirmed to be a suicide and it's found that actually the conditions on the barge were intentionally... Look, I accept that there are a multitude of reasons why people might take their own life, and it can't be down to one particular thing. But if it could be found that the circumstances that they were living in were so intentionally appalling that it would lead to somebody taking their own life.
Listen, I'm sure there'll be calls for an inquest, and there's a strong likelihood that will happen.
Yeah.
Away from the death of this individual asylum seeker, there is a danger of painting out this barge to be something intentionally cruel, which I think is probably a bit unfair. You know, there is facilities on there. There's a gym, there's a restaurant. You know, there's football tables. There's a lot of stuff. There's a cinema room, and they're not trapped on there. They're free to come and go as they please. There's even shuttle buses and taxis into towns. They have spending money. They can go and do touristy things in the local town. It's not a floating prison, as some people have liked to describe it.
Doesn't look like one.
Doesn't look like one.
Well, it's a barge, isn't it? But also, we use it for oil workers. You know, in other countries,
Sure.
You know, it's not just
but
asylum
they
seekers.
know how long they're going
used.
to be spending on it, whereas asylum seekers, it seems indefinite.
They haven't got total freedom of movement. You have to get permission to get off the boat, and then you get searched on and off like you're a criminal. And there's limited access to people who speak their own language. I mean, you could be sharing a room with someone from another part of the world. I mean, how do people communicate if you've been bunked up with someone equally as traumatized as you from a completely different experience and part of the world? It's appalling.